It's generally not impossible for companies to make controversial or seemingly illogical decisions. There are usually a myriad of factors and details that revolve around making a business decision, and many perspectives to tackle it from. However, Nintendo has been in a somewhat strange, but not unique position. Objectively, it's fair to say that they've made quite a number of objectionable decisions, as demonstrated by fan feedback. These decisions began to prompt more statements like, Nintendo is out of the loop, or Nintendo's out of touch with this or that. Disregarding those kind of responses that are just made when fans don't get what they want, there are reasons for holding those viewpoints. While trying to dissect these arguments, I began to wonder why Nintendo made some of those decisions which fueled these criticisms to begin with, so I figured it'd be a lot more interesting to understand why they were made, rather than wonder. This topic dives into the relationship Nintendo has with their fans, as well as their illegal takedowns and game development philosophies. I did a lot of research into these areas, so I'll try to provide as much information, insight, and perspectives as I possibly can, especially when regarding legal intricacies. Multiple examples from cases involving different companies will be used as well. This subject can really apply to all companies, even outside of gaming, but I will be focusing on Nintendo because I care about them the most. Now let's get started. When it comes to fan feedback, trying to please everyone is certainly not the best course of action. You will never win. There should certainly be limits to what fan requests are actually considered. So what are those limits exactly? Zelda series producer Mr. Anuma, when talking about Breath of the Wild, states, "The response of fans is the most important and something we care about very much. We're looking to see that there are no problems with the directions we're taking." Mr. Ishiro, producer of Ace Attorney Spirit of Justice, states that there were a large number of core fans who felt that the previous game was too easy and that there weren't enough places to freely investigate, so we worked hard to first and foremost address their critiques when we made this game. Fan feedback is certainly crucial to some teams and influences their game development. Feedback certainly does not seem limited when it comes to influencing what's in the game. Mario Party fans have generally been complaining about the lack of a return to the fundamental gameplay that was in the older games. The team must have taken note of that with games like Island Tour and Star Rush. They went back to the car mechanic with number 10 for some reason, but it seems like they're really seeing what they can do while adding a bit of their own twist. Playing 1v1 matches online was certainly something a lot of fans wanted from a game like Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Now we have 4 Glory 1-on-1. Entire Final Destination forms were created to suit the popular playstyles too. Those are just a few examples, but it's generally clear that similar companies like to keep an eye on what fans are interested in and what they dislike. One thing that it is important to note is that some of these cases, where it doesn't seem like fans are being listened to, can be blown out of proportion. However, when it comes to those cases, why do they come to be? After taking a look at them, I figured that they fit into separate categories alone. Let's address them. To begin with, these specific company-consumer disconnects seem to largely tie into the creation of games or bringing them overseas. I found this category to be the most significant due to how often arguments and complaints begin in response to one of these actions. To demonstrate, let's talk about online petitions. When asked about petitions asking to bring over games like Xenoblade Chronicles, Reggie said, "It doesn't affect what we do. The thing we know is that 100,000 signatures doesn't mean 100,000 sales." It's important to note that this statement was made 3 years ago, so this perspective may have changed. Regarding the quote itself, he's absolutely right. This does strike as more of a business decision rather than a for the fun of it decision. The issue lies in that although the quote was specifically in reference to online petitions, it can be applied to other forms of feedback and communication due to how similarly they work. This number of online petition signatures doesn't equate to this number of sales. It's essentially no different than this number of emails, comments, or communicated demands does not equate to this number of sales. Too long didn't read? Nintendo doesn't care about your opinions, only when they do. Kidding, that's obviously not what he's saying. However, it prompts me to think of a lot of their future decisions more in a business sense, and while that seems to be the obvious way to go, I wouldn't say so. Miyamoto decided to go on with Luigi's Mansion 2 because he liked the original, for example. It strikes me as more of a for the fun of it decision. When is it more of a business decision than a for the fun of it decision, and vice versa? What factors influence a decision's direction? Even having a bunch of dedicated fans for a series or spin-off does not necessarily guarantee a certain amount of sales. One major answer I have to this is the console stability and current success. Take the 3DS for example. It's extremely well received and successful with tons of users that surpass the Wii U's by far. The continued support for the handheld and its games have consistently lived up to a great standard of quality. The Wii U, on the other hand, is far from reaching the 3DS's success. During the beginning years of its life, there were some really amazing games that got released on the system. Fast forward to its later years and we're kinda keeping things a little safe. Now, it wouldn't be fair to take 3 titles and come to that conclusion, as they still release some interesting games throughout this year. They can afford to be a lot more free with development commitments with the 3DS, but not so much the Wii U, and it probably wouldn't be the best to pour so much into the Wii U at its current life status. My second answer relies on the franchise alone. Mario and Zelda? Easy money. You can afford to not stay so safe with your titles. Metroid? Not so much. When they do manage to create a game more out of a direction of business, how will it fare in unfavorable circumstances? We already detected 2 important factors. Let's use an example. Metroid Prime Federation Force. Arguably, the negative reception is due to its timing, as well as other external factors, such as the takedown of a fan game on Metroid's 30th anniversary, or the lack of acknowledgement from Nintendo regarding its anniversary. In response to initial fan backlash, Reggie said, "Look, we know that the fans want a straight Samus Aran game. We also know that the best way to launch a game like that is to surprise and delight them. If some of you want to take this as an indirect tease for a home console Metroid game, I won't stop you. However, there arguably could have been better planning at the least. If this was an issue of getting the resources or team to do a traditional Metroid game, why and how is that? Next Level Games has never solely developed a Metroid title before. What's stopping them from developing a 2D title or even a 3D title that isn't a spin-off? Alternatively, the director and teams at Nintendo probably just wanted to make a game like this. That's neat and totally fine, no issues there. However, from a business perspective, perhaps it was not entirely the best way to go about this, as it mainly just revolves around the timing of this game. If Federation Force was released alongside an average Metroid title, it definitely would not be as disliked, although I can't speak for the game quality reception. Metroid Prime Pinball was pretty well received. The title had the chance to be positively received as well, but its timing played a crucial role in its reception. You're working with a franchise you haven't really touched in about 6 years. It's already pretty risky, so why elevate the risk by going with something totally new, rather than something fans generally wanted? Safe console, but no safe sales from an IP like this. Conclusion? Paying attention to the state of fan bases can potentially be helpful in predicting the reception of a planned release. The success of a console can also influence the titles that are developed. If you're going to create a certain game that's quite a risky business decision on its own, be mindful of your options, how the general fanbase currently views the franchise, and how they tie into the game's release. Although, regarding bringing games overseas, Nintendo of America once said this, so either their ideologies have changed or they flip-flop, I don't know. I'll just assume it's the former. Now, when it comes to actually developing the games to begin with, it's still important to nail that company-consumer balance, as demonstrated before. It's important to know how your audience feels about your products and what they want. After constantly attempting to try something new with Sonic, the team decided to get back to what they know worked. The fans loved the first 3 games. They have generally positive reception rather than mixed. They know they were doing something right there, so that's what they followed. Sonic Generations and Colors are also games with a lot of positive reception. People really like those games, so Sega knew they did something right by developing them. Needless to say, it isn't hard to understand why they made sure you knew that the modern Sonic games are being developed by the same teams that brought you those 2 widely, positively received Sonic games. See where I'm going? When you create a franchise, you gain fans. The fans enjoy the series for the foundations laid upon them. The Shin Megami Tensei series seems to do well in those regards. Super Smash Bros. Has done that excellently. I'm not too familiar with the Kirby series, but I've generally heard that Planet Robobot was a love letter to the series. Those are only a couple of examples. While it is always nice to want to try something new, how wise of a decision can it be to sort of branch away from your audience? Take Mario Party for example. You'll hear a lot of distaste for the car mechanic. Island Tour didn't have it. it apparently was disliked for its linear style. Star Rush also features individual movement and rushed gameplay.
Go for the key! I'll do it again!
But the lack of traditional Mario Party gameplay makes the new Toad Scramble mode the star of the remaining negative reception.
Do it again!
Granted, after more than 10 titles, it can get somewhat repetitive, but nothing's stopping the gameplay from remaining fresh, fun, and interesting. There's also been negative responses concerning Paper Mario's current direction. The fan feedback situation is somewhat scattered. The development team started on a new game right after completing Sticker Star, the subject of a ton of dislikes from fans. There are also a couple of things worth mentioning, like how Miyamoto arguably had a huge influence in its change of direction, and part of that change even revolved around Club Nintendo surveys. In a way, it's good because that means they actually cared about the surveys, but bad because of the nature of the surveys. I don't know about you, but when I realized I could register all of my games, I rushed as many surveys as possible with really basic answers to get my coins. Coins got me free games and merchandise, and incentives like those should factor in how the feedback is taken. However, even so, that's one title out of few games Nintendo has developed, and happened to be one of those few. This situation certainly isn't applicable to all titles, but we will actually get to similar situations in a moment. I just have no idea how the newest title will sell. Federation Force barely made 4,000 units in Japan. That's insane. Hopefully, regardless of sales, the team can take a look at fan feedback, both positive and negative, and see how they can further improve the series and appease the fans that the series created. Conclusion? Thousands of requests don't equal to thousands of sales, but when it comes to a game that's already in development, it certainly isn't as much of a safe commitment. Incorporating feedback into your work can do wonders for its security. Innovation keeps things fresh, and it's good to have. However, when can it be a detriment? A perfect example of this is F-Zero. It hasn't had a new game in over 12 years. The reasoning behind this, given by Mr. Shigeru Miyamoto, is that I don't really have a good idea for what's new that we could bring to F-Zero that would really turn it into a great game again. This is a case where you can easily stick to the game's roots and still make it fun. You don't need an extremely innovative mechanic, especially when developing a new F-Zero game that will be a risk in itself, seeing as how long it's been since the last game. He also said, if we create a new type of controller interface and we find a controller interface that's particularly suited for F-Zero, then maybe we'll do something with it in the future. Point made. If you just made a better F-Zero GX or something along those lines, I'm sure fans will be happy. If your franchise flip-flops too much, continues on a direction that people already massively disagree with, or is practically dead, perhaps it's a good time to return to its roots and see what you did right. It took Sega a while to realize that before they finally decided to put Sonic to sleep for a while and control a short attention span. Some people will castigate your decisions no matter what you do. The majority of series fans, however, won't dislike you if the change improves what was already present, and won't dislike you if the series remains the same by doing what it does best. Fans will dislike it if the change strays too far from what they know the series for, and dislike it if staying the same means rehashing the content. It's not as black and white as lose if you do and lose if you don't. Conclusion? If a franchise is losing its audience or has its direction shrouded in mist, take a look at what the series did right, and move on from there. You don't need to reinvent the wheel to make it new and smooth, or something like that. Now that we've primarily addressed these fan relationships with company products, we're still not done yet. Now it's time to dissect their connections with legal actions and how these relationships can be further improved. Fan-made content makes your franchise product world go round and round. They connect people to form communities and also communicate how much your franchise means to them. The obvious course of action? Appreciate them. The not so totally obvious why are you doing this course of action? Take them down. Copyright strikes. Channel terminations. Yay. Simple fan-made content is most certainly the least likely to be harmful to a company's ability to protect and use their IP. Simple fan-made creations are things like music covers, animations, artwork, YouTube videos, and the like. Nintendo is known for being pretty strict with some of these. One time, Newgrounds even removed hundreds of Nintendo fan games due to a DMCA. Recently, it's even been reported that they ordered the takedown of not safe for work fan art of their characters. These can't possibly put them in a bad light. Nope, not at all. Policing this kind of content will never sit well with fans. Even if they wanted to, it would take them ages to take down all of this stuff. I wouldn't even call that an exaggeration. Here's an important question. Why would it be worth it to go after fan works like animations and artwork? We will be addressing an important quote soon, but it's important to see the benefits and detriments from doing this. We already know this will cause negative reception. What are the benefits? Nintendo has increased control over how their intellectual properties are viewed. That's all I have. There's no way they can't live with this kind of stuff when plenty of other companies with the obligation to protect their IPs do. Heck, take YouTube for example. Oh man, you guys should see the amount of copyright claims I get on one Mario Kart 8 video. Anyway, Ubisoft has no problem with YouTube gamers uploading content on their games, and even monetizing them. Heck, before they even give you their YouTube policy, they tell you that they consider themselves fortunate to have fans actively engaging with their game content. As a YouTube content creator who happens to upload gaming content, I can't think of anything more welcoming to hear from a company. When it came to protecting their IPs and keeping up their image, they still took the precautions necessary. In their Ubisoft policy on YouTube videos, they explicitly state that you should stay away from controversial topics in the same video and behave like a decent human being. Now, there is one section that irks me which says no offensive content, and these days people label the silliest things to be offensive, so that's a gray area I'd like them to clarify what other offensive content would constitute as, but I digress. You can still allow for this kind of fan interaction and not be so strict with your policies. Doing something as simple as claiming hundreds of thousands of YouTube videos will make people be more annoyed with you than satisfied or indifferent. Conclusion? Calm down. Now, here's where things get a little tricky. The complex fan-made content, like fan games, remakes, and more. A perfect setup for this discussion is another Metroid 2 remake, a remake of Metroid 2 that was 10 years in the making. It was taken down around Metroid's 30th anniversary. With something like the takedown of AM2R, in a legal sense, it's logical. It's a base game with various improvements. I have it myself and I have no reason to consider buying Metroid 2 on the eShop. It's in direct competition with the original that they're already selling. You can basically play a Metroid game for free. I can see why they took it down. A Nintendo representative stated that Nintendo's broad library of characters, products, and brands are enjoyed by people around the world, and we appreciate the passion of our fans. But just as Nintendo respects the intellectual property rights of others, we must also protect our own characters, trademarks, and other content. The unapproved use of Nintendo's intellectual property can weaken our ability to preserve and protect it, or to possibly use it for new projects. I am going to take the time to explain the relevant legalities revolving around this subject. Copyright revolves around the rights that creators have over their creations. Trademarks indicate the source of products and services, and essentially tell them apart from other products or services in the market. These all fall under the category of intellectual property. You can't lose your copyright by not defending it. You must explicitly allow its use in the public domain. Trademarks, however, can be weakened and lost if you do not control how they are used by third parties, although uncommon. Done. There will be links in the description that lead to good government websites. Anyway, let's apply this new information. Allowing stuff like this to exist without taking action can indeed weaken their trademark. They will always own the copyright unless explicitly donated to the public domain, but they can lose the Metroid trademark. Taking action with content like this is very important. However, it's the action itself that counts. They can make the effort to actually approve something like this rather than just take it down. The only issue is that this company, which has to protect its brand and image, has to essentially assume that this fan work contains absolutely nothing that would be objectionable. If they do endorse it, and some sort of controversial thing or violation of their standards is found in it, people will trace this game to the trademark holder. As much as gamers are generally informed on the things that happen with companies, do not count out casual consumers and audiences. Imagine this scenario. Nintendo approves an original fan game of Mario. Something controversial is eventually found in the game. Headlines read, "New Nintendo game endorses blank." News media can be really disingenuous, especially to fit their narratives. It's clear that Nintendo wants to stay as safe as possible. However, even with that being said, companies such as Valve and Capcom were fine with taking these risks. They approved the fan works. Now, here's where we get the general fan disagreement. I'm just going to use an article and some art as an example. They don't lose the copyright if they lose the trademark. You don't lose licenses that you never gave. Although uncommon, trademarks can be lost through unapproved usage of said trademarks. As a business, big or small, what's the point of having a trademark if it doesn't discern itself from other products in the marketplace? Additionally, protecting your IP does not necessarily mean taking down another work. Companies do not have to take down fan projects to protect their copyrights. Valve approved that one Half-Life remake, remember? It probably would have been a bad idea to just do nothing. Case in point, it can be tricky to work with complex fan projects like these, but there are notable examples of how companies and fans were able to allow these projects to exist. Capcom seemed fine with directly supporting the fan game Mega Man X Street Fighter. Sega is essentially trusting their biggest franchise to a talented fan who is known for his Sonic fan games. These are just a few examples. Look, in the grand scheme of things, at least try Nintendo. I didn't even finish this video yet, and you recently DMCA'd over 500 fan games on GameJolt. Granted, it's probably due to how, I quote, the website generates revenue from advertising banners displayed on the site and advertisements played while users wait for the games to load, but it's a bit unfortunate nonetheless. Conclusion? Trademarks can be lost, and Nintendo can potentially invite a lot of more unapproved uses of their copyrighted works by not enforcing them. However, enforcement doesn't equate to shutting down projects. I want them to warm up to trying to embrace these complex fan works, like Capcom and Sega. Use them as opportunities to further build fan relationships. As we reach the end of this video, you may or may not realize that most of these arguably odd decisions were few and very specific. It seemed to primarily occur under the departments of innovation, direct relationships with fan communities, trying to support a console that's not doing so well, and really knowing audiences when it comes to more beloved titles. Putting this all into perspective, they aren't as huge compared to what they already deliver on. However, while no company is perfect, I wanted to identify the few problems and dissect their connections to fan arguments, so that I can provide a better understanding, as well as lay down how things can be done better. They all seem to tie into fan feedback quite significantly. Nintendo is known for their very unique IPs and well-created games that you seriously cannot get anywhere else. They are already doing a lot of things well when it comes to their products, but when it comes to keeping their standard of quality in check, and they're really making an effort to further build these fan relationships that form communities around their franchises, I couldn't think of any other opportunities being missed. Luckily, they aren't very far from addressing. Fans and consumers are the backbones of a business and its relationship to its communities. Fostering better relationships, both legally and commercially, can certainly pave paths for prosperity in both fields. I hope I was able to provide some insight that you hadn't considered before, let you see how the company generally doesn't ignore its audience, give you a better understanding of where fan complaints come from, or at least explain the potential reasoning behind some company decisions and what led them to use those options. Thanks for watching, see ya later.